A fresh new year has begun, and if you're setting new goals for your business, it's extremely difficult to reach them without the right people on your team. And ZipRecruiter has transformed how you go about finding the right people. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards with just one click. Then ZipRecruiter actively looks for the most qualified candidates and invite them to apply. They even review every application to identify the top candidates, so you never miss a great match. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes and industries to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. That's with a PH, not a V. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/Stephen A. with a PH, not a V.
The Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Let me tell y'all something right now. What a game. What a game. Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio, 250-plus markets across the United States of America, and, of course, Sirius XM ESPN Radio's Channel 80. Number to call up, as always, is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. It's time for Straight Talk with your boy, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks. No contracts whatsoever. What a game. What a game. Now, I'm not about to sit up and engage in hyperbole and call this better than, let's say, USC versus Texas back in 2005 when Vince Young put on an absolute show, throwing for 267 yards, rushing 19 times for 200 yards. It's absolutely, positively unstoppable on that particular evening, guiding the Texas Longhorns to a national title victory over the USC Trojans with Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart and the rest of the crew. 41-38 in that game. It was absolutely spectacular. But I got to tell you something right now. Last night was special. Last night was special. It was special to be a part of it. It was special to see it. It was special to be there in person at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium and in the ATL, Atlanta, Georgia. Look, the stadium is off the chain. It's special. Arthur Blank did a hell of a job. I mean, that stadium is so fly. I was running across workers that were talking about how they enjoyed working at it at the place, didn't even want to take time off. That's how fly the stadium was. But nothing, and I do mean nothing, usurps what we witnessed last night for this game. First half, everybody was looking at me saying, what's wrong with Stephen A? Because I was sitting in the suite, an ESPN suite, of course, absolutely depressed. I picked Alabama to win this game, 24-20. I thought Alabama would win this game. And the way Jalen Hurts and Alabama's offense looked in the first half, I got to tell y'all, I had damn near given up. I said, Jalen Hurts, God bless him, because the kid's a good kid. He's class personified. His collegiate record was like 25-2, if I remember correctly. But look, man, look, he's an athlete. He can't throw. I don't like him passing the ball. And evidently neither did Nick Saban, because he only allowed him to throw the ball 8 times. He completed 3 passes for 21 yards. Offense was getting absolutely nowhere. Georgia was beating Alabama at its own game because their defense, filled with a bunch of rough riders, was all over Alabama. I forgot Ridley was a wide receiver for the Alabama Crimson Tide, because he was getting no action whatsoever. None. And then Nick Saban, being the great Nick Saban that he is, made some changes, made an adjustment. And all of a sudden, the world stopped. Figuratively speaking, of course, not literally. What I saw last night from Nick Saban himself, it was something special. It'll go down in the annals of sports for many, many years to come. There's no way around this, ladies and gentlemen. When you look at this kid, what is it, Tagovailoa? Tago. from Hawaii. This dude comes into the game. He is a true freshman. All he had seen this year was mop-up duty. No real action to speak of. Nick Saban pulls the trigger and puts this young kid in to start the second half. He benched Jalen Hurts. Benched him. And suddenly, this kid is doing it up. He's running for first downs. He's making completions. He moves them down the field. He throws a touchdown pass to Ridley, and they're climbing within him. You know what? I just said to myself, hey, what can you expect? And then even when it was 2020 and they were going to overtime, you got your field goal kicker. He completely panics, goes wide left on a 36-yarder, and you're just saying, you got to be kidding me. I mean, to miss it that badly, this kid would not have been able to show his face on campus. I'm going to be nice right now, even though I got his name in front of me. I ain't going to say it. Because it would have been that hard for him to go to campus had they lost the national title because he had an opportunity to close it out in regulation. He didn't do it. We can point to some of the things that Georgia did wrong a little bit later. We can get into all of that. How Jake Fromm, the ball was taken out of his hands. Last 6 possessions, he only threw the ball 6 times, only completed 2 passes. We could get into all of that. We could get into why Sony Michel didn't get the ball more to run the football. We can get into all of that. We can get into why Kirby Smart suddenly got so conservative, knowing that that's the kind of stuff that might play into Nick Saban's hands, who he was a coordinator for 11 years prior to taking the job at Georgia. We could get into all of that. But one inescapable reality is that last play that was a 41-yard touchdown catch by this kid Smith. And here's the reality of the situation. If you are Georgia, how do you let this kid get behind the defense? How do you allow that to happen? How is that even possible? Tagovailoa. He looks right. And he's playing the safety Dominic Sanders for Georgia. Right in the palm of his hands. He kept look right, and then zips left and drills a 41-yard touchdown pass to Smith. Alabama wins the national title on the very last play of the game. Because it was overtime, of course. And I look at it from that standpoint, and I'm saying, wait a minute. You are Alabama. Your quarterback's a freshman. Najee Harris, he's a freshman. You put him in because Damian Harris and, of course, Scarborough, none of them were getting it done for you in your running game. You had Smith as a freshman in your passing game. You had a left tackle who was a freshman. Nick Saban put all of these boys in, inserted all of them. And ultimately, what happens? This happens. Same Alabama team, they're going to lose some key players. Micah Fitzpatrick, Ronnie Harrison. They're juniors. They're leaving early. We ain't even talking about the seniors. But I got to give credit where credit is due. This was something special to behold. It really, really was. And all I can say to you right now, at this particular moment in time, I'm stunned by what I saw. Stunned by what I saw. I didn't expect Alabama to be able to pull this out because I had lost all faith once Jalen Hurts couldn't do anything. But Nick Saban pulled one out of his hat. And right now, he's the greatest college football coach in history. He's tied Bear Bryant all time with 6 national titles. He's got 5 at Alabama. People are contemplating whether or not he should take an opportunity, take a chance, go pro. I'd say stay. Why bother with the NFL? That would be my philosophy. But then again, I'm not Nick Saban. He might want challenges. $8.1 million in salary might not be enough. Not after watching John Gruden sign for $100 million. Even though it's 10 years, which means the salary is only $10 million, even though incentives reportedly can bump it up to $120 million. Bottom line is, Nick Saban's damn near making that amount of money now. And in complete control, and probably is the secure person in all of sports in terms of job security. Matter of fact, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. Who should be more secure in their job, Nick Saban or Bill Belichick? It would be an interesting situation to entertain. But who knows? Who knows? Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. This is Stephen A. Smith coming at you. Number to call up is 888-729-3776, 888-SAY-ESPN. You could ask the question, did Alabama win it or did Georgia lose it? I asked that question on First Take this morning. Of course, Alabama's the national champion. Of course, they deserve all the credit in the world. Of course, Nick Saban deserves all the credit in the world himself. But I got to tell you something. Georgia had this game, and I think they blew it more than Alabama doing anything. Alabama made key stops. They neutralized who they needed to neutralize when it was time. But you had a cushion, and a freshman came in and picked you apart. And Sony Michel didn't get the ball enough. And Jake Fromm made some pivotal mistakes, which was that interception. And Alabama getting it right back after Tagovailoa ultimately made his mistake with his interception. To get the ball right back, nullified everything, and built the momentum for Alabama even more. Arguably, that was the play of the game. But that's just me. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. Back with more on the national championship and your calls in a minute. Don't touch that dial.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio. Number to call up, as always, is 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. Tua Tagovailoa. That is how you pronounce Tagovailoa's name. Tua Tagovailoa. That's how he pronounces his name. Tagovailoa. That's how you pronounce his name. Look, we can slice it any way we want to. What a game last night. It was something special. I didn't expect Alabama to be able to come back from that wings, but when Raekwon Davis intercepted Jake Fromm, I knew there was a chance. And lo and behold, we all saw what happened. You're in a cover two, you're Georgia. You've got Malcolm Parrish up against Smith, no bump and running. You didn't do anything to impede him at all. Just let him blow right by you. And then after that, Dominic Sanders, the free safety, the strong safety, he was frozen because Tagovailoa kept looking right. Sanders was frozen, and by the time Tagovailoa unleashed and dropped that 41-yard bomb, it was a bullet. It wasn't just some high-flying bomb and all the way up and coming all the way down. He drilled that bad boy. Sanders couldn't recover. Smith catches a touchdown. Rookie that caught 8 passes on the year, or that was his 8th catch of the year. From a rookie quarterback, a freshman quarterback that never played with the game on the line in his entire career, this entire season. Everything was garbage time. I give Nick Saban a lot of credit. I give him more credit than I give anybody because of the multitude of decisions he made in putting in the freshmen that he put in. But I also got to look at Kirby Smart, who I respect, but he got a bit conservative. I got to look at Sony Michel not getting the ball. I got to look at the Jake Fromm foolish mistake with the interception. Not just that, but the sack that he took in overtime, even though they ultimately made the field goal anyway. So that nullified it. But then I also got to take into account the fact that you're Georgia. Why are you playing zone? Why are you playing cover two? Nobody's supposed to get up top. You're supposed to watch deep routes. Alabama went 4 vertical. Sent 4 guys deep. But it's not all fly patterns. If you're Sanders, you got to know, you got to see that Smith blew by Malcolm Parrish. And you got to cover that. He was a bit too late. And, of course, the Georgia Bulldogs, a national title. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. To the phones we go. Let's go to Buddy in Tuscaloosa. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up?
Hi, Stephen A. I wanted to call in. The first thing was you opened the show bragging on Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And this is something...
No. Hold on. What did you say? Hold on, because your mouth is too close to the phone or whatever. I couldn't understand what you were saying. What did you say?
I said you opened the show by bragging on Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And I'll admit it's a really nice stand, probably one of the top 10 in the country, but there's some problems. I was there for the FSU game in the upper deck, And there's a point in the upper deck you can't see the video board at all because you're even with the leading edge of it.
Well, you would know that. You would know that. You would know that better than me because I can assure you I wasn't in the upper deck of the stadium. So you got me there. Go ahead.
So, like I say, it's nice, but I still think the nicest stadium in the country is AT&T Stadium. I mean, that is a cathedral to football.
Oh, you talk about Jerry Jones' $1 billion playpen with the whole big jumbotron? Without question, there's nothing that beats that. There's nothing that beats that. That's a good point. Go ahead.
But, I mean, to the game, I was there in the student section. I mean, the whole place was down at halftime, just about like you said you were. And I had some friends of mine texting me saying, what should we do? What should we do? I said, we've got to put Tua in. I hate it.
Hold it. There were actually folks saying you got to put Tua in?
Yes.
They felt that way about him. Why did y'all feel that way about him since he wasn't seen much this year? Why did you feel that way about him?
Well, I'll say this. The Alabama fan base, I mean, there's been some infighting over whether we should have played Tua some more. Especially going into the Sugar Bowl, there were rumors that he was going to play more. He's played limited in garbage time, but his arm, even in garbage time, I mean, you can go back and watch the film. He has made some incredible throws late in some of these typical cleanup games. But I mean, some of the games we were playing earlier in the year, we could pull Jalen at, I think there's one point we pulled him in the second quarter against somebody until he played a ton.
I got you. I got to interrupt you because your signal is not that clear, but I get where you're coming from. But listen, major props to y'all. Y'all know y'all Alabama Crimson Tide because I certainly wasn't thinking about Tua. I was too busy lamenting what I was seeing from Hurts. I got to be honest with you, but thank you for the call. I appreciate that. Let's go to Mike in Massachusetts. You're live with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio. What's up, Mike? Talk to me.
What's up, big fella?
I'm good.
Fella, listen, Georgia had him, but Saban made the changes he needed to make. My man came in the game, made a big play. And like they say, big-time players make big-time plays in big-time situations. At the end of the day, they just got out-coached. I think that they were out-coached in the second half.
Kirby Smart was out-coached?
I think, yes, I did. I just think Saban made the better decisions in the second half, even though they made mistakes. But at the end of the day, the kid made the big play, and Nick Saban made the adjustments he had to make, and that's how they won that game.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
The Stephen A. Smith Show. Hour number 2 being brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics. Taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. A story like this, as it pertains to the NBA, and recent comments by Rick Carlisle, coach of the Dallas Mavericks, president of the National Basketball Coaches Association. It's a touchy subject because Rick Carlisle is a championship coach. He's a damn good coach. Even though Stan Van Gundy is devoid of a championship, there is no denying that he's an exceptional coach. I appreciate the candor of both. I've spoken to Rick Carlisle about this subject in regards to LaVar Ball and his verbiage and his incendiary verbiage towards Luke Walton, coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. Stan Van Gundy is in on it now. He's aimed his ire at ESPN. Rick Carlisle called out ESPN while calling out LaVar Ball as well, calling an article by Jeff Goodman and who was with the Balls in Lithuania a disgrace and one that erodes trust. Because Rick Carlisle and the Coaches Association were pointing to the relationship that they have with ESPN, and evidently they have a problem with the fact that Jeff Goodman and ESPN printed this article quoting LaVar Ball, going off about Luke Walton, how he's too young and he can't coach this team, which is the Los Angeles Lakers. This is why they were in the midst of a 9-game losing streak before the Lakers won a game the other night. I know Rick Carlisle. I don't know Stan Van Gundy that well. I know that I respect him. I know that his brother does an outstanding job here at this network. I know that we're honored to have Jeff Van Gundy. And when Stan Van Gundy was doing some work for ESPN, we were honored to have him. I like Stan Van Gundy. I really do. I love his candor and his honesty. But as I said about Rick Carlisle yesterday, it doesn't make them right all the time. Stan Van Gundy, after Rick Carlisle went off about ESPN, saying the story failed to provide quotes or perspectives from any players or from Lakers management, either named or unnamed, verifying the claims made in the story. The article lacks any of the basic fundamental benchmarks and standards of reliable journalism. This is according to Rick Carlisle and the National Basketball Coaches Association, essentially relegating it to ambulance chasing. I disagreed with Rick Carlisle. I disagree with Stan Van Gundy. It is a story. If you don't have a problem with LaVar Ball, you certainly can't have a problem with ESPN. At least Rick Carlisle had the decency to I shouldn't say decency because it's not like Stan Van Gundy was indecent in any way. So a better word would say at least Rick Carlisle highlighted how he had a problem with LaVar Ball every bit as much as he had a problem with ESPN. But I'll say about Stan Van Gundy's comments the same thing I said about Rick Carlisle in the National Basketball Coaches Association statement. LaVar Ball is the father of the number 2 overall pick, who is a point guard for the Los Angeles Lakers. LaVar Ball, obnoxious, loquacious, classless, or any other word y'all want to point out towards him because of this statement about Luke Walton, no matter how distasteful it may be, that doesn't make it not newsworthy. LaVar Ball's son is the point guard of the coach he was talking about, who happens to be the coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. That makes it a story. And with all due respect, not to get even remotely political here, but if we're going to quote and lament or laugh at and denigrate a future-to-be commander-in-chief at the time who during the campaign was validating the size of his hands, everything's up for grabs. I would love to sit down with a Stan Van Gundy or Rick Carlisle. I'm not talking about the distastefulness because they're right about that. Rick Carlisle was right about that. Everything he said about LaVar Ball in regards to the quote about Luke Walton was absolutely right. He was wrong. It was beyond the pale. He had no business saying it. He was wrong. But to blame the network for quoting this man is ridiculous. His son is your starting point guard. I think LaVar Ball's comments was a betrayal of Magic Johnson. It was a betrayal of the Los Angeles Lakers. It was even a betrayal of his son. Because it put his son in a bad spot, and it makes you raise your eyebrows and wonder, what is the son going home telling his daddy? And that's not fair to Lonzo. And it's even more egregious that his own father put him in that position. But it's a story. Everybody want to sit up there, stick out their chest. Oh, who is Stan Van Gundy or Rick Carlisle? Tell ESPN. Stop that. We don't have to get into all of that. They can say what they want. They can feel how they want. All I'm saying is that it is clearly a story. That's the only premise I'm arguing. It is clearly a story. If LaVar Ball comes out and says, I don't want my son on the Lakers, Magic Johnson doesn't know what he's doing, we're not supposed to print that? We're not supposed to report that that's what he said? The man didn't say it anonymously. He said it. You don't quote him? Come on now. Come on. 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. That's one thing that I want to talk about. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was LeBron James and him speaking out about H&M. H&M clothing had an advertisement out. And to be completely honest, to be completely transparent, I can't applaud LeBron James enough for weighing in the way that he did on an ad that can only be described as tone deaf. It was an article for H&M featuring a young black male model wearing a hoodie, and the inscription on the hoodie read, "Coolest monkey in the jungle." That's what it said. LeBron James spoke out about it on his Instagram post. He put a crown on the kid's head. It said King of the World. And then LeBron James wrote, quote, "H&M, you got us all wrong. And we ain't going for it. Straight up. Enough about y'all and more of what I see when I look at this photo. I see a young king, the ruler of the world, an untouchable force that can never be denied. We as African Americans will always have to break barriers, prove people wrong, and work even harder to prove we belong. But guess what? That's what we love, because the benefits at the end of the road are so beautiful. Hashtag live, laugh, love. With a heart symbol. Hashtag love my people. Couldn't said it better myself. LeBron James is absolutely right. Snoop Dogg was absolutely right. H&M crossed the line with this particular advertisement, with this particular promo. Now, who in God's name in the year 2017 doesn't know that that's offensive? H&M should be ashamed of itself. And I applaud LeBron James for calling it out like that. He is the preeminent iconic figure, arguably in the world of sports, clearly in the basketball world. He may not be the king because he's not the champion. That would be Kevin Durant and the Golden State Warriors. But when he takes positions like this, it shows why he is worthy of being perceived as somebody having a crown. Because there was big of LeBron James to point that out. It was the right thing to do. And I want to state for the record, I stand with him 1,000%. That was a highly offensive promo, a highly offensive advertisement. And H&M should know better. Plain and simple. I'm not going to go any further than that. But that says it all. A little kid, little black kid at that, wearing a hoodie, coolest monkey in the jungle, and you think that's cool? Inexcusable. Absolutely, positively inexcusable. Props to LeBron James, Snoop Dogg, and others who have spoken out against this. Consider me right there with them. 888-SAY-ESPN is the number to call up. That's 888-729-3776. Back to your calls and more in a minute. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio.
Craving even more of Stephen A?
Him of all people.
For around-the-clock access to the man?
I'm Stephen A.
You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Stephen A. Smith and on Facebook at Stephen A.
I want to piggyback off of what I was saying about LeBron James speaking out because I want, listen, the Stephen A. Smith Show just went in 250-plus markets nationwide across the United States of America. In no time, it'll probably be over 300. I'm greedy, y'all. I'm not interested in monolithic appeal from one particular community, in my case, the African-American community. I'm interested in mass appeal. I like everybody listening. I like everybody watching. The more, the merrier. And for me, the issue is fairness and it's understanding. You know, I want to say something that I've never said on air before, but I've said off the air on many, many occasions to many people. I'm not somebody that believes that because somebody may have been insensitive, racially or otherwise, that makes you a racist or anything like that. I'm not built that way. I'm not that kind of guy. There are some people out there, and the word ignorant isn't always negative. There are some people out there that are simply ignorant and oblivious to what may be offensive to a particular community. That's why I try to be as fair and as understanding as I possibly can. There are white folks out there that do things that would come across as racially insensitive to an African American, and they had absolutely no clue that they were remotely offensive. There are things that happen in various communities throughout our country where folks from a particular cultural group just didn't know. Or you just didn't know you were offensive to them. I communicate with folks from the Jewish community every day. There are certain things that I absolutely definitively know would come across as offensive, and I do everything that I can to avoid it. My question is, what if I made a mistake and I was offensive one day and had no idea? Would I not want them to tell me so I could make sure I didn't repeat those mistakes? Absolutely. The Latino community, the Asian American community, and beyond, we don't know. Even in the Native American community, you have some people who find the Redskins name highly offensive. The tomahawk chop, highly offensive. Whether it's Braves or Florida State Seminoles or whatever, highly offensive. Kansas City Chiefs, highly offensive. Others from the Native American community say, well, no, we're not offended. We just don't know. But when you do know, and when you're told, and you do it anyway, we got a problem. When we talk about H&M, what person doesn't know in this world that associating a black person with a monkey is not offensive? How could you possibly not know that? How could you possibly not know that? There's no way. That's why it's problematic. And that's why it needed to be said. I'm fair-minded. Black folks offend other folks, I'm going to sit up there and say, look, you were wrong. But as a black man, there's something that's so flagrantly offensive, I have an obligation to speak out. And I will never hesitate to do so. Not if I believe that to be the case. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. We're going to talk some NFL playoffs because we got some NFL playoff games coming up. We're going to talk about Nick Saban and whether or not he should go pro or stay at Alabama. We can talk about last night's championship game. We could also talk about the way that LeBron James, for all the good that he did by speaking out on his Instagram account against that insensitive act by H&M with their promo with the little black kid. We can also highlight the fact that LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers stuck up the joint last night. Minnesota blew them out the building. And if they continue to look that way, in any capacity, they got no shot at winning a world championship, an NBA championship. Just no shot whatsoever. By the way, I'm down here in the ATL because I was here last night for the national championship game. Once upon a time, the Atlanta Hawks looked to be relevant. You know why the Hawks ain't relevant now? Because Budenholzer can coach. And because he can coach, and he's proven he could coach, and they had a couple of years of success, they said, you know what? It appears they said, you know what? We can afford to take folks for granted. Clean house, curb spending, let's totally rebuild. Evidently, the city of Philadelphia isn't the only organization engaging in the process. Now it appears to be the Atlanta Hawks. Let's see how that works out for them. Back to the phones we go. Jonathan in Georgia, you're live with Stephen A. Talk to me.
Just want to talk about my opinion about LeBron James and the Cavs and why he is the double-edged sword of that city and that organization. You can't argue his greatness. The only thing subjective about his greatness is where you would rank him among the all-time greats, but he's there. But what LeBron James demands, Stephen A. Smith, is a win-now product, and you can't argue with that because he is one of the greatest, and he's in a position to win championships every year when you have them. The downside of that
Stop right there. Educate me. What was I arguing about with LeBron James? When you say I can't argue with it, what do you mean? Well, who's trying to argue with that?
I just wanted your perspective on this. I just want to say he's a double-edged sword to where, because he demands winning right now, Cleveland does not have the opportunity to build for the future because he's not interested in draft picks. He's not interested in building. So the problem is, yeah, you're going to win now with LeBron James and you're a contender to win a championship, definitely the Eastern Conference every season. But when and if he decides to leave after his contract expires and go somewhere via free agency, because they were limited winning in the now, they don't have the assets to build for the future. So while he's one of the greatest of all time,
so what's your question?
My question for you is, what do you think about that? Do you think that LeBron James is more of a hindrance in that way than he is a benefit for Cleveland? Because when he's there, they can't build for the future.
All right, I'm going to start calling you Max. You keep going on, Jonathan, because that's a long question. But here's the deal. LeBron James, you can't necessarily fault him because you're always better because of his presence. You're always better because of him. It's unavoidable. But here's where you can throw some shade on the greatness of a LeBron James. Kyrie Irving's only 25, 26 years old. So when you sit there and say they can't necessarily build, the fact is if LeBron left after this season, you still would have had Kyrie. But you alienated him while he was there with LeBron. So if I'm Dan Gilbert or anybody else, what I'm doing is emphasizing to LeBron, we need you to make sure that you ingratiate yourself with cats to the point where even if you decide you want to do something different, we don't have to decimate our franchise because a whole bunch of folks didn't want to stay even while you were here. Not a whole bunch of folks in this case because it was Kyrie Irving, but Kyrie Irving's a bad boy. That's a devastating loss. And I don't know how you get around that. Look at what he's doing in Boston. You realize that Kyrie Irving right now is an MVP candidate? You realize right now if the players were to begin today that the Boston Celtics would be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference? And that's after Gordon Hayward went down in Game 1 of the NBA season. Think about that. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A., ESPN Radio.
You're listening to the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast.
Number to call up to the Stephen A. Smith Show is always 888-729-3776. That's 888-SAY-ESPN. So Rick Carlisle had something to say about ESPN. Understood his point, but just disagreed. Stan Van Gundy goes a bit further. No problem with LaVar Ball whatsoever, but he has a problem with ESPN. And, of course, Steve Kerr said something about it, calling it a ratings ploy. Listen to what Steve Kerr, the two-time championship coach for the Golden State Warriors, had to say about LaVar Ball in his comments about Luke Walton.
I've talked to people in the media this year. I said, why do you guys have to cover that guy? They say, well, we don't want to. Nobody wants to. But our bosses tell us we have to because of the ratings, because of the readership. So somewhere, that I guess it's in Lithuania, LaVar Ball is laughing at all of us. People are eating out of his hands for no apparent reason, other than, he's become like the Kardashian of the NBA or something, and that sells.
I find nothing disrespectful about what Steve Kerr said as a perspective. I'm on the record. I don't think this company should have went over to Lithuania to cover LaVar Ball. Neither of your sons have even proven they could play Division I basketball. And we don't know how successful or how unsuccessful the Big Baller brand is. One could argue the only reason they're relevant is because Lonzo Ball is playing for the Los Angeles Lakers. So I don't find fault with what Steve Kerr said in that regard. But I'll read this tweet from Frank Isola of the New York Daily News, my buddy, who does an outstanding job and has done an outstanding job covering the Knicks for many, many years in New York City. Listen to what he wrote in this tweet. Steve Kerr and Stan Van Gundy have used their platforms to lecture us on politics. That's great. Yet they're not okay with the father of an NBA player having a platform to talk about his son's team. Question mark. Parentheses. Not an endorsement of obnoxious LaVar, but how is it different? Question mark. Seriously. Frank Isola has a point. Now, I happen to find Steve Kerr a kind, decent, gentle man who's very, very smart and obviously very accomplished. I have no problem listening to him on politics. Greg Popovich served this country honorably. I certainly have no problem listening to his comments on politics. Stan Van Gundy, smart as a whip, incredibly honest and candid, somebody I respect. I have no problem listening to him on politics. But others might. Folks who are political aficionados might. People in that genre might. Constituents of a candidate they did not support might. Did it stop them? And I don't recall any of them speaking in private. They made sure to speak in the microphones and cameras so the world would hear what they had to say. Now, are they comparable to a LaVar Ball? Of course not. Does LaVar Ball come across as classless? Yes. As far as I'm concerned, did he betray Magic Johnson, the Lakers, and even his son? Yes, he did. But he has a right to say what he had to say. And I will stand tall in telling you, you have to quote him in that regard. You have to report that. The man is talking about his son's coach. If LaVar Ball never said a word about Lonzo, but said, I don't want my son playing for the Los Angeles Lakers because I don't think Magic Johnson knows what he's doing, will we have heard from these folks? Why this insatiable appetite to come to the defense of Luke Walton? Why? Luke Walton, I think, is a good young coach. I think he should be given a chance. Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka didn't hire him. Jim Buss did. Jeannie co-signed. If Luke Walton got fired, is there anybody that can definitively come to his defense? I don't believe he should be fired. I like Luke Walton. I want him to stay on as the Los Angeles Lakers coach. I wish him success. But if Magic Johnson made the call that Luke Walton had to go, should we be protesting in the streets? They have the worst record. They're tied for the worst record in the Western Conference. They're tied for the second worst record in all of basketball. They are a very young team. And that has a lot to do with it. But if Magic Johnson decided he wanted to go in a different direction, could we definitively fault him? So what's the uproar all about? LaVar Ball is the father of the starting point guard of the Los Angeles Lakers. As wrong, as classless, and as ridiculous as his comments were in terms of it being beyond the pale and highly inappropriate, that does not mean it's not news. It means he may very well be very distasteful, but it doesn't mean it's not news. And for Stan Van Gundy to sit up there and say he got a problem with ESPN, but no problem with LaVar Ball makes absolutely no sense. Zero. It's just a thought. It's just a thought.